What if the first photo ever taken of you captured the moment your entire life was being uprooted? A tiny, barefoot girl standing alone on the scorching tarmac of Saigon, wearing nothing but a nappy and a Red Cross tag, waiting to be flown away from the only world she'd ever known. What if that little girl grew up on the other side of the planet, not knowing her name, her story, or the mother who never stopped loving her? And what if, after 32 years of searching through silence and hope, she finally stood face to face with the woman who had lost her and never forgiven herself? This is the journey of Swan. The Girl on the Tarmac. April 1975. Saigon trembles under a fading sun as the final days of the Vietnam War collapse into chaos. At Tan Son Nhut Airport, smoke hangs in the air, engines roar like beasts preparing for escape, families cling to each other, knowing they may never meet again. History is splitting at the seams, and in the middle of that storm stands a 3-year-old girl, barefoot, hungry, confused. She doesn't cry, she doesn't speak, she just stares at the giant airplane engine as if trying to understand the thing that's about to swallow her whole. This little girl is Swan. No one knows exactly who brought her to the airport. No one knows the last hands that held her. What we know is this: by the time she stepped onto that tarmac, the world had already decided her fate. She was to be one of nearly 3,000 children evacuated under Operation Babylift, a desperate attempt to save thousands of orphans, and children who weren't orphans at all. Some were abandoned by war, some were surrendered out of love, some were taken without their parents' knowledge, and some, like Swan, simply slipped through the fog of history. A Royal Australian Air Force officer captured the moment. A tiny girl in the hot sun, a Red Cross card on her wrist, surrounded by paper cups. Swan didn't know at the time that this moment would mark the beginning of countless new lives and the end of countless Vietnamese families. She was loaded on a C-130 Hercules bound for Bangkok and then to Australia. She remembers only fragments: heat, noise, strangers' hands lifting her, a fear that felt deeper than her size. When she finally landed in Australia, she weighed just 7.7 kilograms. Malnourished, teeth decayed, her tiny body had fought so much before she ever touched Australian soil. Doctors placed her in hospital, nurses held her through the night, and eventually, a family in Adelaide welcomed her into their home. A warm bed, new clothes, love she desperately needed. But love cannot erase questions. As she grew, her adoptive parents tried to help her stitch together what little they knew: that she came from Vietnam, that she had been handed from orphanage to embassy to airbase, that no one intended for her to be lost forever. But the truth was always missing. And for the child who had once stood alone on the tarmac, that missing truth became an invisible ache, a quiet sadness she carried into adulthood. Because she didn't want to know why she was adopted. She wanted to know who had loved her first, and whether that love had ever faded. The search across oceans. Some people search for their past out of curiosity, others out of longing, but Swan searched because she had spent years falling asleep wondering if someone in Vietnam still whispered her name in the dark. In her 20s, she began piecing together fragments: adoption papers, orphanage records, scraps of stories told by nurses. Each clue was a thread stretching across oceans, but every time she pulled one, another came loose. Files were missing, names were changed, records conflicted. For many adoptees of Operation Babylift, the truth was buried under hurried paperwork and the panic of a collapsing country. Babies had tags removed, identities scrambled, families torn apart without knowing. But Swan refused to give up, because every night she felt a pull, soft but persistent, like a heartbeat calling from the other side of the world. She researched for years. She wrote letters. She asked for help from Vietnamese community groups. She saved money to travel back. Her adoptive mother supported her, gently reminding her, "No mother gives up a child without pain, not then, not ever." Finally, in 2007, 32 years after she had been flown out in the chaos of April 1975, she returned to Ho Chi Minh City. The moment she stepped outside the airport, the humidity wrapped around her like a forgotten childhood. The sounds, the smells, the colors, everything felt strangely familiar, as if her body remembered what her mind couldn't. Guided by a Vietnamese social worker, she traveled to a small neighborhood where a woman had come forward, claiming she believed she was Suan's mother. Suan's heart rattled in her chest. Could it be real? Or was it another fragment that would crumble? Then the woman walked into the room, small, fragile, eyes filled with a lifetime of regret and love held back too long. She reached for Suan's face. Not her hands, not her shoulders, her face. She pressed her thumb against the faint scar under Suan's left eye, a scar no document had ever mentioned, and she whispered, "You are my daughter." Suan froze, and then her entire world cracked open. Her mother was shaking. Tears ran down her cheeks as she cupped her daughter's face, as if making sure she was real. For decades, she had carried guilt like a shadow she could never outrun. She had been pressured to surrender her mixed-race daughter, the child of an American serviceman, because having her put the entire family in danger. "I wanted to keep you," she said, voice trembling, "but they told me we would all suffer. I thought you would be safer. I never stopped thinking of you." They cried without words. They held on to each other like two people trying to mend the years that life had stolen. A mother who thought she'd lost her child forever. A daughter who grew up believing she had been forgotten. But now, in this small room, in a city both familiar and foreign, they were whole again. And all the questions that had chased Suan across continents finally had an answer. The girl from the photo. After their reunion, Suan finally looked at the photograph again, the one taken in 1975 of her standing alone on the tarmac. But this time, she saw it differently. She no longer saw a lost child, she saw a survivor. And in that moment, another reunion was waiting for her, one she never expected. 25 years after Operation Babylift, the Royal Australian Air Force pilot who had taken that photograph reached out to meet her, Flight Lieutenant Ian Frame, the man who had captured the moment that defined her past, now stood in front of her, older, warmer, eyes full of pride. "It's you," he whispered, looking at the photo, then at her. "I've wondered for years what happened to that little girl." Suan smiled, because for the first time, the girl in the picture wasn't a mystery. She was a story with a beginning, a middle, and finally, a reunion. Ian told her everything he remembered that day, the scorching heat, the shoeboxes lined up like fragile hopes, the nurses rip off hot sweaters the nuns had dressed the children in, the desperate rush to get the plane off the ground, the long, loud, terrifying flight toward a new world. He told her about the chaos, about the heartbreak, about how proud he was that Australia had opened its arms to children like her. And Suan listened, tears gathering in her eyes, because she finally understood something. Her story wasn't just hers. It belonged to the pilots, the nurses, the mothers who relinquished their children, the adoptive families, the friends she had grown up with, and the thousands of other Vietnamese adoptees who had carried invisible scars into adulthood. For decades, people had looked at Operation Babylift as a miracle, a rescue, a quick salvation. But now she understood its layers, its beauty, its tragedy, its unanswered questions. She wasn't just a child saved by history. She was a child shaped by it. And with every step she took, meeting her mother, meeting the pilot, learning the truth, she was reclaiming pieces of herself that had been scattered across two continents. She was no longer the girl on the tarmac. She was Suan, a daughter, a mother herself, Vietnamese and Australian, lost once but found again. A home returned. Every reunion carries both joy and sorrow, and Suan's was no different. Years after they found each other, her Vietnamese mother passed away, leaving behind a familiar ache, the fear of losing her all over again. Yet grief could not erase what they had reclaimed. If anything, it made their reunion more miraculous. For 32 years, they lived on opposite sides of the world, believing destiny had split them forever. But against history, against chaos, against the war that tore families apart, they found each other again. Suan often thinks of the shoebox babies, the heat on the tarmac, the pilots and nurses who risked everything, the parents who loved her, and the mother who let her go to save her. Her life is proof that reunion doesn't erase the past, it heals it. Today, when she looks at that photograph, she no longer sees loss. She sees a little girl destined to find her way home.